Welcome and hello to Exceptional Effort, Mind and Body. I'm here with Annemie, Stephen and Heather, and today we're talking about animal therapy, the benefits of having those pets in your life that you love and adore and make you feel great. Where do we start with that? How do we deal, and how do animals really help us connect and help our health?
So I'll go ahead, I guess, and start. I can say that they love unconditionally, and so in just simply, staring at an animal or interacting with an animal, that the response that you're going to get, especially if it's your animal, is going to be a very satisfactory response, and that's very, welcoming, joyful, playful. And it's absolutely, saddening and disheartening when you see somebody, beating an animal or doing something to them, because they'll still naturally exhibit, the loyalty and, the companionship and wanting to be near their owner regardless of how, what is going on. So I think unconditional love's like one thing that really stands out to me.
There is one exception to that, Stephen. Cats.
Even then, cats are very independent.
They are.
But still, like, there's still that factor. Like, the cat, just what happens is they do it very subtly. They want it independently done. They want to think that you're not paying attention, and then they give you the attention. Because my parents have they have a 17-year-old Himalayan, and that cat, I tell you what, like, you give him attention and he runs like a bat, out of hell, and then he'll come back around on his time.
Yeah.
So
I had a cat when I was young. After the movie, for those who were old enough to remember, the movie E.T. Came out, and we got a cat just after that that movie came out, and I saw that movie, and I called the cat E.T. And he was like really very independent, and we'd play, and then when he'd had enough, he'd claw my hand, like literally draw blood. Then he'd run off, and then he'd come up and be all like, yeah. Yeah.
So from a clinical standpoint, have you guys looked at some of the studies around animal therapy?
I personally haven't.
No?
Hippotherapy is huge. I know somebody, I actually know a vet that eventually wants to dip into that realm, like into the horse therapy. And then also too with dogs, like I know we had that conversation recently, like regarding dogs, and especially with kids, like if a kid's very unconfident and doesn't do well in school, doesn't do this, doesn't do that, it's interesting seeing the turnaround that happens when they're interacting with say like a dog, or in an instance in which we were all talking about with regards to cows.
Yeah. So one of the studies that I read about dogs in particular in animal therapy is that the parts of the human brain that light up when we are, feeling love and connection also light up for the dogs. So they are unique in that not every animal feels that sort of mutual exchange, but dogs do. So therapy dogs that are giving that kind of oxytocin rush and that kind of like happiness light up for people, they also experience it. So I thought that was really beautiful when I came across that study showing that we're not just in this case using these animals for our pleasure, but they actually get a lot of pleasure in return from playing that role. I think that's so lovely and typical of dogs, right? They're too good for us.
That's why they say that when you adopt an animal, it's like you're the only family of that dog.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
you become his pack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's connected to what you just mentioned. It's the happiness and everything that goes with it. Exactly.
Right.
I'm really protective as well. I wasn't around at that time, but my grandfather used to have German Shepherds, and we grew up with German Shepherds or Alsatians, depending on where you are in the world. And but we were told the story of my granddad, who was walking home from the pub one night and he was very drunk, and he collapsed in the street. And the German Shepherd jumped the 6-foot high fence went down and sat next to him and wouldn't let anyone near him who tried to help him. The dog just was probably not very helpful because it wasn't allowing anyone near him. But it was no one could get near my granddad until he actually woke up and moved forward. So dogs, that can be very protective of you as part of your family as well.
Absolutely. That's what you see sometimes in these stories when people who are homeless, they have a dog as a companion because it's something they need because they are alone outside. And when they have an accident or they are injured, the dog protects them in such a way that even the people trying to help them, bringing them to hospital, are unable to approach these people.
Yeah, I still think in general that our healthcare systems really underestimate the health benefits and the value of therapy animals. Dogs are kind of the obvious choice because, like we said, they really enjoy doing what they do. They're really good at it. But animals in general, in all the studies and experiments I've seen, putting them in nursing homes and in chronic care facilities and working with soldiers who have PTSD and prisoners, and the list goes on and on, the benefits outweigh medication, outweigh other therapy. Like, it's just phenomenal what the connection with animals does. And even I'm reminded now that I mentioned prisoners, the therapeutic benefit of having people rehabilitate animals and take on that responsibility, and then how transformative that role is for the person who's doing it. I'm also thinking of a farm where young juvenile delinquents are brought to rehabilitate chickens. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but there's, I think it was somewhere in Ontario, there's a farm where they rescue battery chickens who are in really rough shape. And the owner of this program was saying that it's so good for kids who are having a hard time taking personal responsibility or, behaving and acting socially properly with other young people. They do really well with these chickens because the chickens grow back feathers fast. They bounce back really fast. So, unlike some other animals who have been abused and run down, chickens, man, it's a project that gives back really quickly for these kids so that they can see the result of their love and their attention and the responsibility. I can't think of a better therapy for young people who have problems, right? Like, medication won't do that.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely completely agree with that. Like, and I can't attest enough, like I said, to even like you were like you mentioned, like I know we went into like cows, like livestock based animals.
Yeah.
Again, horses, like seeing like what they do for kids with even autism.
Right.
Non-verbal. Like, they'll get things out of these kids that you would never imagine in your right mind.
Right.
And so, like you said, it's a completely underutilized resource that could be, extremely beneficial in the healthcare system. And if you think, even with regards to, what's currently going on, like, since humans can't be, in rooms, what would be the potential benefits for having an animal, in the room, amidst, obviously if a person's, given that they're not allergic, given that there's not going to be reactions or anything, how beneficial could that be to have something in there that's just, tending to giving you the simple need of love and, happy and providing happiness. Like,
my heart breaks when I think about this, especially in relation to our nursing homes and this COVID-19 fiasco, because one of the biggest casualties of this lockdown have been elderly people in nursing homes who they're not only at risk of the disease, but what we're seeing is the damage that occurs from social isolation for these people, right? And you're so right, Stephen, bringing in animals anytime, regardless of a pandemic, is so great for elderly people who need to care and interact with something. And now, more than ever, couldn't this make such a difference? I would love to see that implemented for long-term care facilities.
I'm like right there with you. Like I can't help but wonder, like, you know, at what point do you draw the line? Because, you know, you've got people that are dropping dead from natural causes as a result of going from having something to having nothing.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
it's almost like, do you weigh in the quality of life for having access to all the things that you love, or being tortured and tormented,
Yeah.
you know, for endless hours of, you know, wondering when it's going to end or if you're going to survive, you know,
Yeah.
to even see the day that it ends. And so it's, like you said, it's very heartbreaking, you know, seeing, you know, things like this, like you said, like, you know, not even being able to access animals or to access, you know, even, you know, let alone other individuals to talk to or to mediate, and to use an animal as a mediator to talk to somebody or to communicate with somebody.
As it alleviates not only the physical pain of not being able to touch someone, like they say, skin pain, it's also the emotional pain and the soul pain that is released just by having an animal close by.
And these things affect us like medications, like chemicals. You know, it's just as physiologically significant to have those feelings of grief or love and interaction. It affects your physical body, right? Yeah.
I see this often when I was very sick before, in these forums of chronic ill people. They really needed a cat or something just because they were able to walk the dog, but at least to have a cat nearby that would purr. And just the sound of the purring was very relaxing, or easing the people's uncomfort.
Right. So it decreases stress levels, it reduces cortisol, it lowers the heart rate, it lowers blood pressure. And then you think about the trickle-down effect of all of those physiological changes, more effective than a lot of the medications people are taking for that without the side effects, right? It's so one thing, I mean, where are you again, Annemie?
From Europe.
Right. Okay. So I've again come across a number of stories and articles about facilities across Europe that are doing this more often than we do in North America. And I've seen creative nursing home models where they're interacting with young people, maybe college kids or little kids, right? And so why, like, what's wrong with North America that we're not doing this more often? What's the resistance, right?
We're in Canada.
I think personally it has to do with the conflict of interest. Like and you know, hopefully this doesn't get around, you know, like in a negative way. I just think that our whole medical system is, I mean, it's a monopoly at this point. And I just think that there's no room for alternative medicine, because we've got like companies that are consistently pushing it out. And so they're afraid to see something replace what it is that they're creating in order to make money. And so I think personally, between you and I think it boils down to
between us
it being a threat to modern medicine. It's like the whole idea of, you know, like Western medicine versus Eastern medicine and alternative medicine. And, you know, we're starting to see alternative medicine more and more in the States. I don't know about if you can attest that in Canada, but I think that that's a big part of it, is that there's all this research coming out, and there's so much money being shoveled into keeping it down because of the fear of it, what it can do to the market for like all these prescription medications.
Well, it depends on what the profit model of a particular facility is, right? If their profits do not depend on people getting better, then you're not going to see people get better, unfortunately.
Exactly.
But there are so many people out there I know who are their hearts are in the right place, their heads are in the right place, and they're in healthcare, and they want to see people live better lives and get better. And ultimately, if you go, you know, far enough upstream, when we think about the cost of sick elderly people on our healthcare system, so in Canada, you know, a ton of our taxes are going towards paying for that system, right? Would it not make sense to keep people in better health and off of drugs and cognitively sharp? And when we know that something so natural and lovely does the job, what is wrong with us.
Because the research does show when we look at it, and I'm thinking about this from the perspective of in my house, I've got that come up regularly every day, sometimes twice a day, some kookaburras and magpies, and I feed them, and they eat out of my hand. And I'm just thinking, because the research does actually show that giving is really good for you. So giving actually lowers risk of depression. You have a longer life if you're a giver. And I'm just wondering from that perspective, when you have that pet, whether that actually, because a pet is actually dependent on you. If it's something, I mean, the kookaburras and the magpies that come to my back door are not dependent on me, but I get a great sense of satisfaction being able to give that to them. And I just wonder from that perspective, if we link that together, going, well, we know research shows that giving is actually good for you, and connecting that to giving to a pet, there is that connection that can be made there.
Yeah. Oh, I like thinking that it's multifaceted like that too, right? So animal therapy, we tend to think of it as what the pets give us, what animals give us. But you're absolutely correct. There's that element of feeling needed and providing care that gives people purpose, and purpose keeps people alive. Purpose keeps people healthy and vibrant, right?
Well, that's the point. I mean, it's that perspective of you actually, you are now, like one of my best friends, his uncle's 80 odd years old and been a bachelor his life, and I'm pretty sure my friend is going to be like that, but he always has little Jack Russells that he looks after, and that gives him that purpose. And I just noticed, from that perspective, there is that relationship there. Although I've noticed over the years the dogs change because they age and they don't live as long as Hello.
What is it too? I'm such a weirdo out on the sidewalk. I'm one of those people, when I see a dog, like, forget the person, I look at the dog and I'm like, hey! And I can't help but smile at them, and they know it, and they look at me and they smile at me, and then I feel like we have this exchange, like we understand each other. I love dogs.
Look, Jesse.
In having this today, I've actually realized, and I hadn't thought about it, but from my perspective, I've noticed, like, in the past, well, at least a year, 2 years, the relationships I have in business has changed dramatically because, I just realized now, when I approach people, I approach them like a dog. I walk up and go, hey.
And they respond well?
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm always excited, even on the phone, I'm excited to speak to someone, even if it's someone that's having I know they're going to complain. I always have that happy approach, like I'm this excited puppy dog. And get wonderful responses. So we learn that from pets as well, how to respond. And I think you can learn from a cat as well as to when to go, hey, I've had enough, right? And then let people know that as well. So there's a whole raft of, when you talked about the cross purpose, Heather, I think there's a lot to learn. You can grow from pets as well.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too. Like, thinking about dogs too, like, obviously I just picked her up and you guys all had a reaction, and so I think that in having pets, like, that's another thing too, is it's a small way, like, especially in the public now, like remaining 6 feet apart, or whatever it is that the rules are that are in place, like, a pet always seems to exhibit like very positive emotions. So it's like somebody simply seeing you walking your pet, could warm their heart just by just observing you and your interaction with your pet. So it's very interesting to see how it psychologically plays a role in, making people's days better.
I can't help smile. I want to squish him.
She's a sweetie.
Innocence. I mean, you look there with the dog, and you can see that there's that innocence with them. It's not. I mean, there's very few animals that deliberately, conniving or have that. Well, I don't know of any animals that are conniving or have that kind of approach. The ones that they may be defensive, but they don't have an underlying agenda, so to speak. And I think from that we can. That's part of that approach that you're just talking about. We have this openness and know that we can feel safe with them because we know what we're doing.
Trust. Animals are easy to trust. Yeah. I have a question that's a little bit off of this track, but what is your experience, all of you, with people having therapy animals in your communities, or if you get on a plane, or students in university, this kind of thing? Because I just moved from a fairly hipster neighborhood, and something that I noticed when I lived there was that a lot of young people have their therapy pets, and this can range from a rat to whatever, a dog, and they bring these animals into the grocery store, and something that I noticed is that there is a lot of pushback. So there seems to be a lot of kind of chatter and resistance to that among other people who say, well, I don't want to see your animal in the restaurant, I don't want your animal on the plane with me. And I wonder sometimes if that comes from not believing that the need is legitimate. Like, we roll our eyes a little bit at some of these prescriptions for, you need a therapy animal because you're anxious. Well, me too, we're all anxious, right?
Yeah.
But then what is that response? Is it jealous? Do we all wish?
It's envy. I
personally
think it's
I kind of do too.
I hate saying that. My girlfriend's got an ESA certified dog, and I'm all like a huge proponent for her. I mean, I see what that dog does day in and day out for her. And that dog's trained to even to not respond to people. That dog's trained to get up into her arms when she calls for it if she's stressed out. And the dog sees that, it will immediately get up on her her shoulders and hug her. And so, and it's a 60, mind you, she's a 65-pound boxer. And so I think that it's a lot of it boils down to envy. Like, I can't say, attest to it enough, that it's just, like you said, the jealousy factor, the factor that, well, they've got one, I wish I had that too. And unbeknownst to them, if they have an underlying condition, they can have that. They're just not taking the time.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking is, like, if this was more widespread and more widely accepted, and if more people kind of went for this, then would we see less pushback or conflict or jealousy about it?
Yes, right? I think so. I think 100%.
Like, I mean, because people are not used to it, they don't understand it, and what most people don't understand, they generally push back on out of fear, as opposed or not understanding. So that might be part of that component as well.
I remember Brené Brown. She said there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. In sympathy, she says, "Oh yes, and I see what you're doing," and empathy says, "Oh, how nice what you're having," pets, for instance. The difference is you're just looking down on the person, or the other one is you're hugging the person. So it's a little bit. This is how I perceive it. Well. So you're having this little rat. Oh, you can have it. It's not for me. I don't need this kind of things. I don't understand your problem. And then the other one is, oh well, if this rat is helping you, great, you, and I wish you the best.
It's the difference between saying you don't deserve that and I deserve that too, right? Like, elevate yourself to that level instead of criticizing what someone else is doing. Question whether you could do that as well. If that's, I think it would be healthier for all of us to push for that instead of criticizing those who are doing it.
Yes, it's a circle. It's making it bigger, to
exactly.
Expand the capacity for everyone.
So how would you do that if you start to recognize and think, well, maybe that kind of pet would be useful? What would be the things that you would notice, and how would you go about that?
That's a great question. I would like to know more about organizations that are doing this and support them and help them get the word out. So when I see dogs for vets and
Seeing eye dogs is a huge, at least here on the West Coast, is like a huge organization for dogs that are basically their support dogs. And man, are they stringent too. Like, these organizations do exist, and they have like very strict protocols. And so sometimes they'll even, and the reason why I know this is sometimes they'll hand out dogs or put them up for adoption to others, solely because they don't qualify, yet they're extremely intelligent and extremely responsive in most cases. It's just that they don't meet a specific protocol from having been trained up.
I've seen a meme for that was so funny. There's a hilarious meme that says like the dogs that get rejected for what is it, like, no, maybe it's police work. They get rejected because they're too friendly. And then there's someone in the meme who's like, I'll take your entire supply. It just sounds wonderful. These trained dogs who are too friendly, that's their flaw.
Yeah, and they've got several $1,000s worth of training under their belt, and so the people that do end up with those dogs, they're extremely pleased because not only do they have a friendly dog, they have a dog that they don't have to worry about, front ending and front loading with all the things that they want it to do.
Yeah. So organizations that are promoting animal therapy in healthcare or in nursing homes or for vets, or I don't even know, like for more mainstream.
Well, we have this kind of, it's called like a farm. It's where kids with disabilities, most of the time it's emotional, mental issues, and they can spend the day there or they live there for a few months or longer periods.
Yeah.
They work on the farm. They live, like we discussed in the beginning, they do the work on the farm. They also help with the animals, and they rehabilitate again, and to get back to, let's say, normal life, to get used to normal life. And if it's not possible, they just, this becomes their job eventually.
Yeah.
Become a farmer.
Yeah.
This is what's used to be done more often in Belgium, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, that's like the cow farm link that I sent you guys. It's in Surrey, BC, and they do, there's lots of them. Yeah, but how can we support organizations that are doing this to be more visible and to make this more understood and more mainstream?
We're doing that.
I'm not sure, but I'd like to.
Yeah, well, sharing information and letting people know about it, which is part of what this show is about, this episode, sharing that there are alternatives out there, and we covered a lot of things that have benefits that we probably take for granted because we just, a lot of people don't, and I know from my perspective, I grew up with pets. We had, my grandfather had a farm on my mum's side, so we had cows, sheep. My mum still has, geese and sheep and all sorts of animals, and I guess I hadn't really thought about it as therapy, but I always had it, so it was never something that that I considered to be. It was just normal, but not everyone, especially if you're living in the city. I mean, a lot of people don't have that. Yeah,
when I leave the city and I drive through the country and I see cows, I'm like, I'm about to crash my car every time, and it's not like I've never seen a cow, but if I've gone several months without seeing sheep or cows, I get excited. My spirits lift, and I want to look at them, and whatever that is energetically, it's really tangible, and it makes a difference to my body, right, and my well-being. And so that's
another benefit I got from a pet. A friend went overseas and they asked me to look after their little dog, and they had this little white puppy thing, I don't know what it was called, and so I was at their house and I picked up the dog and I took it outside, and it did its business and things like that, and then I put it in my car, and as I'm driving along, I'm just going, I can smell something, and so the dog had done its business on my back seat, and so it's again dealing with that kind of frustration as well, going, oh, okay, how do we, and managing that. So there's that element too of dealing with, because you're dealing with things that's not always perfect, and you're dealing with an animal that is not in control, so it's not like you can, yelling at it's not really going to help, and just you grow from that experience.
Responsibility.
That's my unexciting poo story.
I wanted to get back to your story about the cows, that you really need to see some live animals once you get out of town. Well, for me, it's also a therapy. I just have to walk outside every day, and I just take pictures of insects. I deliberately, I really go inside the forest or in the. I live at the countryside, just outside the city, and I'm very lucky to live in a wonderful place. And I just go into the grass and I just look for insects till I found some, and then I make pictures of them every day. And it's like Zen meditation, you know, while you're looking, time stops, and then you always find these little wonders of nature, you know. And, this is my therapy. You know, I have children, they just run around. We have a large space in the backyard, and I have a dog, and I had cats who brought me rats and mice every day as a present, as a gift. on the table, on the marble table outside every day. I was thinking, oh my God, not again, but that was a gift. And nice. I walk the dog, I just go look around for insects. Before we had cows on the other side of the road, but unfortunately they're gone now. They understand completely how you feel, you know, just look for...
Cows are good huggers. They are good listeners. They're just these, you know, the presence that a cow has is so peaceful. It's so nice to be around.
They're very soft.
They're like your audience, like when you're like doing a live movie, like when I was out in Valley Springs a while ago, I was out riding horses with one of my friends, and it was funny because like 25 cows, like kid you not, were like lined up watching us interact with the horses. Like no joke, they were all huddled together, and they were watching our every move, and kind of just like it was like almost like an awe, you know, like the ooh-ah moment where they have the big eyes and they're just looking at what are these people doing, like
right, they're so curious.
That's like in scouting when you were little. I don't know if you did this, but when we had this yearly camp, we had to go through the field with the cows, and they were all very curious. You know, when you're 8 years old, these animals, they look huge, you know, and then you had to go through the field. And then they were running behind you, you know, they were sniffing, you know, and then you were, oh my God, these huge animals.
Yeah.
These are these memories that just pop up now while you're telling this story.
I wonder how much of that links back to that. We were talking about the purpose as well, of the benefits of having a pet, but a sense of being needed as well. You've been talking through this thing about my friend with the Jack Russells, and just how the animals curl up to him. We were at his house watching TV. They will just curl up and lay on his leg and sort of do just and creating that from your perspective, the benefit to you of having this sense of being needed as well. So just wondering how much that impacts you, because we all need to be needed in some level.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important. And we know that, you know, from studies as well, how significant loneliness is as a negative health factor. Loneliness takes years off your life. Loneliness contributes to chronic disease, depression, cognitive decline, right? So if you are curbing that loneliness, how much are you improving your health with that?
You don't need a pet for that. You can just feed the birds. You know, just seeing the birds coming back every day is already something very nice as a result, you know. Just we see it at home. We have every year more and more birds are coming. It's like the word is spreading around, you know. It's very funny to see how many birds we have in the garden just because we are feeding them.
Yeah, it's nice if you live somewhere in nature where you can interact with wildlife like that. It's not really possible for a lot of people who live in a city. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard. Like, I mean, depending upon what city you're in, obviously it varies, and you know, especially with what's taking place, they're actually seeing a lot of life come back to certain cities that wasn't there before. I can't remember if I think it was Italy or France, I think, and how like once people stopped going outside, suddenly like this population of birds came back, and they're like a singing kind of bird, and you know, a bird that's very interactive, and so there's, you know, but yeah, on the whole though, it's like where do you see that? In some major cities there's hardly any wildlife, so
we were talking about promoting organizations who do this. I know there's one on LinkedIn that I have found that does promote dogs for vets. So maybe after this we can find the link and drop it in this conversation, because they seem like an organization that's doing some trailblazing as far as raising awareness about the benefits for that.
Yeah, that'd be
awesome.
And we're starting to run out of time. Do you want to just a takeaway for our audience as to something that, from an animal therapy perspective, we should look out for, or something to work towards, or how they can incorporate that into their life?
Well, I would just say from my perspective that I think it's fantastic. Like medically, health-wise, I've seen the benefits, I've seen the research. It's undeniable how beneficial caring for animals and receiving their love can be for people. So in general, I would just say that, if you can have a pet, great. If that's not something you can have, then finding other ways to interact with nature seems to be a win-win. I would highly recommend it.
Annemie?
Yes. If you cannot walk a dog, there are these places where you can adopt a dog. And they allow you sometimes just to walk the dogs as well, to take care of them.
Yeah, shelters.
Shelter. And maybe this is an option if you really like to take care of animals, but you're not willing to have one at home. This is also an option.
Mm-hmm.
That brings up something funny, Annemie, is that in certain countries, they have like coffee shops where you can go, and they have like dogs running around the coffee shop and meeting and greeting, and you can feed them too as well.
I would love that.
Really neat. It's like out in, I can't remember. I think it's Japan. It's really neat. Like I'll have to pull up a link after we're done. But yeah, that brought up another random spontaneous idea regarding animals and how they're in a business.
That's fantastic. All right, there's so much there to take away. We'll drop a few links in the post as well. Thank you, everyone. This has been Annemie, Heather, Stephen, and myself, Damian Andrews, with some animal therapy for exceptional effort, mind and body. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.